everybody. My name is Chris Greco. I'm your host for Worldview. Today, what we're going to talk about is Africa. We're going to talk about some countries in Africa. The reason is because there's some similarities between these countries, and I'm going to save that pretty much till the end. I'd like to talk about each country separately, and then put them together at the end and show you that. So, what we're going to do is, first of all, I would like to geographically point out where the countries are because I think that's pretty important. And I think a lot of people don't understand how big Africa is and exactly how much area we're talking about here. So this is Google Earth Pro, which is fantastic. It's really great. It's got some great graphics, and also it provides you with a really nice look at some of these countries. So what we're going to take a look at today is we're going to take a look at three countries. We're going to take a look at Sudan. So Sudan, you can see here, it's got some coastline here, not much, but it does have a coastline along the Red Sea. Now, where does the Red Sea go? The Red Sea goes to the Suez Canal. So basically, you go from the Suez Canal through the Red Sea, and you can go all the way to the Gulf of Aden, which is what they call the Horn of Africa. So that's Sudan, and that's what we're going to talk about here. Then we're going to talk about some other countries, and one of them is called Mauritania. Now, Mauritania is right here. It's all the way on the other side of the coast. Now, what are we talking about when we talk about these areas? Well, let's just think about distance, right? So the distance between Sudan, which is here, and Mauritania, which is here, we'll go ahead and do a line here, and we'll just figure out what we got. So we have about almost 3,000 miles. So a lot of people might think, well, so what? That's 3,000 miles. Well, let's take a look at the United States real quick and see how much 3,000 miles is. And 3,000 miles is, this is 2,200 miles. So Africa, just that one area I showed you, was 800 more miles than the entire United States. And that's just one part of Africa. So I mean, it's that type of thing that you want to take a look at, is distance and relative distance, and populations, and we'll talk about populations as time goes on. But those are the three countries we're going to talk about. Or no, the third country I did not tell you is going to be a place called Mali, and Mali again. We take a look at Mali. It's right next to Mauritania. So, I mean, this is, you have Mauritania and Mali right next to one another over on the west side, and then you have Sudan, which is on the east side. But there is one thing that they have in common, among many, many things. Mali and Mauritania have their own border, but we're going to talk about what exactly that is here in just a second. So, so Mali, Mauritania, and Sudan, and what do they have in common? Well, first of all, let's talk about Sudan. They got their independence in 1956, basically from Egypt, from Egyptian areas. They have a military leadership. Basically, it's not really what you'd call democratic. Their natural resources: oil, iron ore, copper, chromium, zinc, tungsten, mica, silver, gold. All these things. I want you to take a look at the different resources that are offered by each of these countries. I think that's really, really important to find out what it is that links them together with someone common, right? Population 48 million, one nationality, one official language, one major religion, Sunni Muslim. Most population is under 24 years old. Now, when you take a look at these three countries, Sudan, Mauritania, and Mali, once you take a look at this, most population under 24 years old. That's a big deal. And I keep telling you as an audience that that's a big deal. It is a big deal. Think about the generational aspects of that. I mean, if you have over 60% of your population is under 24 years old, what does that mean? These are the up and comers. These are the ones that are going to be the next generation of how this country is going to go, one way or the other, right? Less than 3 docs per 10,000 people. You'll see that with these three countries. There's not much in the way of medical support here, folks. Not much at all. It's really scary. Diseases: malaria, dengue, typhoid, bacterial diarrhea, Hep A and E, meningitis. That's what they include. You're going to see the same types of diseases, same type, except a couple that have polio, which is really bad. Water pollution, soil erosion, deforestation are the current environmental issues, and localized food insecurity is severe. You're going to see that also with some of the other countries that we're going to talk about. Inflation, 382%. It is considered the number one country from the standpoint that has the highest inflation. It is the highest inflation, one of the highest inflations in the world at this point. And I think the second poorest country is Moldova. I think is got a bad inflation rate, but they're poor. And I think the same with Sudan. They export gold, oil, sesame seeds, sheep and goats. Sorry, not sheep goats, but sheep and goats. Cotton, ground nuts to the United Arab Emirates, China, Saudi Arabia, India, and Egypt. They import sugar, wheat, packaged medications, jewelry, tires, cars, and vehicle parts from China, India, UAE, and Egypt. Very important. China there. Over half of electrical is from hydropower, which is good. That's a good deal. Consume more than they produce in oil. They still use oil for different aspects. ISIS and Al Qaeda terrorist presence within that area, and also there's some border disputes with Central African Republic CAR over water rights. So that's what we're talking about. So what are we talking about from the standpoint of distance here? It's a pretty big country, folks. Now you got 48 million, right? So this is what you have here. So it's right central. Go from Rapid City all the way to Dallas, from Chicago to Albuquerque. So it's a pretty big country. Let's go to Mauritania. Mauritania. I'm no longer going to give you the World Factbook reference. You can see it here, and all you have to do is replace Sudan with Mauritania, and you'll get the World Factbook reference. Independence from France in 1960. Interestingly enough, another country we're just going to talk about also had an independence from France in 1960. Terrorism presence, Al Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, the AQIM. Natural resources include iron ore, gypsum, copper, phosphate, diamonds, gold, oil, and fish. Now, think about this just for a second, folks. First of all, they have coastline. That's why they fish, and that's why they do a lot of fishing, different aspects, crustaceans, those things. But what happens is that you have a population of about 4 million. So here was Sudan with 48 million. This has 4 million. One nationality, 4 ethnic groups, 1 official language, Arabic, and 1 religion, Muslim, 100% Muslim. Over half population is under 24 years. Again, that half population under 24 years old. Less than 2 doctors for every 10,000 people. This is very low. It's not very low. In my looking at all these World Factbook countries, usually it's like 2 doctors per 1,000 people, 1 doctor per 1,000 people. This is 2 doctors per 10,000 people. Many of the same diseases as other countries, but polio is also a major disease in this area. Limited fresh water, deforestation, soil erosion, among environmental issues. Severe localized food insecurity. And remember, we just talked about that in Sudan. So that's also an issue there. 15 political parties. So, I don't know whether you see this pattern, but whenever you have a lot of political parties, you have a somewhat unstable democracy. It doesn't always work that way from the standpoint of a lot of political parties. Export iron ore, fish, gold, mollusks, processed crustaceans to China, Switzerland, Spain, Japan, and Italy. Always the first one is the most percentage. So they're doing a lot of things with China. They import ships, aircraft, wheat, raw sugar, refined oil from China. France, even though they're independent from France, they're still doing business with France. So over 73% electricity is from fossil fuels, and the country is a source, transit, and destination for human trafficking. I'm not going to go any further with that, but that's basically what we're talking about. So it's a big deal, and we're talking about Mauritania. This is Mauritania, big country, right? What was the population? What population? 4 million, right? Look at this. It's all the way from Albany to Atlanta, from Cincinnati all the way to North Atlantic. So around here, around North Carolina, coast of North Carolina. So it's big. I mean, Toronto all the way down here to basically Myrtle Beach. I mean, this is a pretty large country, and with 4 million people. Remember, Sudan, large country with 48 million. The last one we're going to talk about is Mali. Now, again, 1960 independence from France, right? Natural resources, gold. Let's see, where else do we see gold? Natural resources, I don't know, gold. let's see, else do we see that? Iron ore, gold. You see how this all works? Iron ore. Iron ore is absolutely essential for steel. It's essential. Tungsten, you know, basically essential for tungsten steel, right? So you have gold, iron ore, right? Here you have gold, iron ore, bauxite, essential for aluminum. You can't make aluminum without bauxite. It doesn't work. Copper, copper, extremely important for things like electronics, electronic boards, those types of things. Uh, let's see what we have here. Do we have copper here? Copper. What else do we have here? Copper. And so, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that when we have copper or gold or iron ore or anything else, these countries within Africa contain an immense amount of of uh, of resources, natural resources, and these things they're wanted. They're wanted by the countries, other developed countries that need these types of natural resources, these raw materials, in order to do what they need to do to manufacture what they need to manufacture. And interestingly enough, I mean, it's I mean, I just don't know how else to phrase it. If a country gets a foothold in these African countries, they can, in fact, use those resources for whatever they want to do. And we'll talk about this as time goes on. Muslim main religion, one nationality, 10 ethnic groups, 11 languages. The French is official. Population about 20 million. Over 50% of population under 20. See that? Over 50% of population under 24 years old. What's this? Over half population, 50%. And what's this one? 60%. So you have three basically young countries, that are on the teetering edge, right? For democracy, they're trying really hard, but one is already a military government. That the other two are trying to get into that democratic aspect. Very low physician to population rate, less than 1 per 1,000. Many countries, or many of the same diseases as other African countries: dengue fever, malaria, schistosomiasis, masiasis, a lot of schistosomatiasis, a lot of different types of diseases, deforestation, soil erosion, inadequate supply of potable water. Those are all environmental issues in Mali. Severe localized food insecurity. Let's see. What do we have? Severe localized food insecurity. What do we have here? Localized food is severe. So all these things, they're very similar, right? 13 political parties, export gold, cotton, sesame seeds, lumber, vegetable oils to United Arab Emirates and Switzerland. That's it. But they import refined oil, clothing and apparel, packaged medications, cement, broadcasting equipment, from Senegal, basically Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, China, and France. So basically, what's happening is that China's involved in this no matter which way it goes. Over 67% of electricity from fossil fuels. 4 different terrorist groups in the country. Source, transit, and destination for human trafficking, and a transit point for illegal drugs. So all these things, come about, and you kind of wonder what that is. And in Mali's case, what I wanted to do was show you real quickly what we're talking about when we talk about Mali. And I think this is important just to show it to you here. So this is what we're talking about when we talk about Mali. Now, in this country, this is Mali here. So what are we talking about when we talk about Mali? We're talking about 350 miles by 350 miles by 693 miles. But you got to remember now that Mali extends over here too. It's almost like a little growth area, whatever you want to call it. So basically 639, and then what you have is you have, we'll take it all the way here, 784 nautical miles. So I mean 639 by 700 and almost 800 nautical miles. So basically 600 by 800 nautical miles. So if you were to do what we do before, is to take this to the United States and figure out what we're talking about. So we're talking about 600 600 nautical miles. So we're just going to start at the top end here. So 600 nautical miles is about right here. That's your 600 nautical miles. Well, what are we talking about with almost 800 nautical miles? We're talking about here. So now we're talking about here. So we're talking about here and then here. So I mean, if we were to take this, we're talking about these states right in this area for Mali. So I thought I'd do something a little bit different with showing you the comparison here, so you can kind of see the different states that they actually encompass. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about those areas. So now, what do all these countries have in common? Okay. They've been visited or plan to be visited by Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov. This according to the New York Times. Now, the reason for the visits is to strengthen ties with the African countries, but it's also to strengthen security ties, and that's pretty important. I think, my opinion, that another reason is to lay a foothold on countries that have raw materials that Russia could use for their war with the Ukraine. I mean, I just showed you some iron ore, tungsten, gold, copper. All these things are essential for war making. For war making. In one case, and I didn't show it to you. I think that in one case there was actually uranium. Yeah, uranium. So in Mali has limestone and uranium. And guess which country was just visited by Sergei Lavrov? That would be Mali. That was the one that was visited. Now he's already visited South Africa, and he plans on visiting the two other countries that I just told you about, Sudan and Mauritania. So what's going to happen is they're going to start to lay footholds in these different countries and then do mining rights and then provide security for the mining areas against rebels and whomever else. And then they're going to start using those resources for what they need to use them for. So how are they doing this? Well, they're doing this with the Wagner Group. Now, I don't know whether any of you have heard about the Wagner Group, whatever you're going to call it. But these are vicious, barbaric mercenaries. They will kill anybody and anything for a buck. And basically what happens is they are in the Central African Republic, and they are providing security for that African country's mineral resources. And basically what's happening is by providing security, they're also allowing Russia to be able to mine and be able to use those raw materials. By seizing such resources, by controlling the mining of these African countries, Russia is basically, I shouldn't say basically, they are skirting the sanctions that are afforded them by the European Union and everyone else to get these natural resources to continue whatever type of manufacturing they want to continue. So they're very, 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 I mean, they are all set to go in there and do whatever needs to be done to make that work. And that's an issue. Now, when we talk about this, then we talk about BRICS. BRICH or BRICS. Now, this has been brought up a number of times, and everybody seems to like, it's what the heck, doesn't make any difference. Blah blah blah. It's the cooperative between Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Now, President Lula is currently in there. He is a progressive leader. He's met with President Biden, who just thinks he's great. But the bottom line is they're still in this cooperative with Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Now, India has already stated, and China has already stated, that they're not going to comment on the war in Ukraine. That's Russia's issue. We're not going to get involved in that. Blah blah blah. That's it. So basically, and South Africa the same way. So everybody within this area, this BRICS area, has been kind of pulling back on Russia's war with Ukraine. So if you see this is China. And basically what's happening is, and interestingly enough, China also has the Shanghai Cooperative, which is interesting because what this does is it's called the SCO, which is the Shanghai Cooperative Organization. I'm going to put that on there so you guys have the ability to take a look at this. And basically what it does is it's it takes a look at different countries. And interestingly enough, it's got some really interesting countries in here. Um, they 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 originally organized the Shanghai Five in 1996. Added Uzbekistan in 2001. I mean, we're talking about China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. So this is the Shanghai Cooperative Organization. I'm going to put that down here just so you know what's going on. I'm also going to put down a, uh, a site where you can take a look at this. So the Shanghai uh, Cooperative uh, Cooperative Organization, and this is, we have this, we have BRACS. I mean, these are the things that really that scare me personally, because I mean they're trying to make themselves like this really interesting UN thing, So this is where you can find this, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and that's the link for that. And then you have BRICS. So what you do is by doing what they're doing, by making all this work, uh, they are basically saying you can sanction us all you want, doesn't make any difference. We'll get whatever resources we need from whatever country is basically unaligned, and we'll go ahead and give them security, give them all arms. I think I read somewhere like 45% of the arms is in Africa is from Russia. So I mean they're giving a lot of weapons to Africa to fight their wars, their rebel wars, or whatever else they need to do in there. So this is what's going on here. Last BRICS meeting was in China, if I remember correctly. I think it was, and this is where I mean China not only has the BRICS meeting was last in China, but in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, they constantly have the meeting. So it's I mean they're making themselves the leader of this whole thing. And I think that's really important to understand, and to make sure that we understand that there's nothing there that we're going to have a problem with in the future. And I think that's why I went through this whole thing, is to make sure you understand that Africa as a continent is is absolutely essential for the future of raw materials, and being able to get those raw materials to different countries and have those countries be able to produce things. And interestingly enough, um, the U.S. does have a little bit of work in there with some different countries, Uganda, Kenya, a couple others. But Russia and China are making very, very big strides in that. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, is that China has no bases outside of China as of like whatever it was, a year ago, whatever it was. Now they have one, and it's in Djibouti. That's in the Horn of Africa. They're putting a foothold in Africa. Once they put a foothold in Africa, it's going to be very, very difficult for us as Americans to get back in there and to do whatever needs to be done, because they are going to see, the Africans are going to see that they're getting weapons and they're getting money and they're getting things that they need to be able to make a secure country, and they're going to depend on the Russians to be able to do that. So that is the worldview, and that basically, it's my opinion on this whole thing. So just understand that, and make sure that you also understand that there are many, many, many organizations, and this is something that it's very, very um, it's very, very important that if you don't do what needs to be done from the standpoint of understanding how this world impacts one another, and we impact one another in a world arena, then what's going to happen is that the country that we don't want to have a foothold in another country's resources are going to do that. And the thing is that in some cases, in a show that I was on about a month ago, 2 months ago, there was an individual that had a lot of dealings with Africa that said the Africans, they want to be their own independent nation. Mali, Mauritania, they don't want to have people come in and tell them what they're going to do and how they're going to do it and whatever else. I'm for that. independence is very, very important. And I think giving a country that independence to be able to grow as they see fit and to use the resources that they have to be able to grow their economy, I think is very, very important. My opinion. So that just about does it for me. Until next time, I want to say thank you very much from the Worldview, and thank you very much from Chris Greco, your host. And hopefully, what this did was give you a little bit more information about that part of the world and what it has to do with other countries, European countries, Asian countries, all these different types of countries that are out there. So until next time, take care, and remember always to have a worldview. Thank you.